Good morning, everybody. Welcome, and we are glad you can join us. This is the second day of TiE DC Capital GovCon 2020. This session is about innovations. Particularly, we want to discuss forward-looking innovations from idea to implementation in variety of U.S. federal agencies. My name is Mahesh Joshi. I am Associate Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship at George Mason University. Also, I run my own consulting firm, Joshi International Inc. I've been part of TiE for a long time. I've been a board member with TiE for several years. With me today is a great panel. Dr. Mark Abrams he's from Harmonia Holding Group, where he is the Chief Technology Officer. And his technology side expertise is AI and machine learning, and he has worked with several agencies. So I'm looking forward to dip into his experience that focuses on his experience dealing with the government. Along with that, two representatives from different government agencies. I have Samuel Jones, who's the Assistant Director of Economic Programs at U.S. Census Bureau. Again, very impressive bio. Yeah, he manages 1,300 employees and manages 75 different census survey instruments. And what was impressive to me was that he has actually worked with other countries like Kenya and Bangladesh, where they've been taught into use of census tools for economic development. And last but not least is Omar Baichi. Omar Baichi is a technologist, as he describes himself, and he works for the Department of Housing and Urban Development in Jeannie May part of it. And again, he also has worked with several commercial firms in the past, IBM, PwC, to name a few. Uh, uh, I introduced Mark Abrams, but I didn't say Dr. Mark. So sorry about that. He's like me, a PhD, and used to be an associate professor. So with that background introduction, let's jump into the conversation. The idea is, how does innovation take place in federal agencies? And to my surprise, when Deputy CISO Elizabeth Capella's keynote speech was going on, the last question she got is from an audience saying, can you explain what is the process of innovation management at DHS? And I said, oh my God, here goes my panel. And then very nicely, Elizabeth Capella said, that's a long question. It needs separate answers. I said, thank you. We have three guys to handle that separate panel. So, Sam, first question goes to you. Overall, when you think about innovation, how does your agency identify need for an innovation? That's the first part. And the second part, how do you adopt it within the agency? Sam, you're
Okay.
muted, please.
Yeah. I think we're going to have that all day long. Okay.
Exactly.
But again, thank you for that question. In my agency, and just for background, I've been with this agency for 41 years, my entire federal career. So the perspective I'm going to give you is going to be from that filter, how we do it at the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay. Early on, when I got to the Census Bureau, the term wasn't innovation. The term was to improvise and make adjustments. And then in the later years, it moved to adapt and change depending on what was going on. And now we find ourselves in an environment where change is just not enough. Innovation, adaptability, flexibility, all of that has to work in concert with each other. We believe at the Census Bureau that innovation is a critical component to solutions. We're very good at defining our problem, but oftentimes we don't have the skill sets available to solve those problems in an innovative way. And what we've started to do much more of is to bring in specialized skill sets and give that or those folks room to do their thing. And that's how we introduce innovation into our space. Now, that's not to say that's the only place we're getting innovation, but what I have found in my career is innovation resides in the defining of the problem, the defining of the scope, as well as what solution that you put forth. So there is space for innovation across the life cycle of any product. And that's how I look at it, and I believe that is how we do it at the Census Bureau.
Thank you, Sam. The follow-up, the second part was once you've identified the problem or you've defined the scope or you've been introduced to a solution, how does it become agency-wide? What are the steps or how the adoption take place? You could say some steps or time frame or whatever works in your agency.
It varies. It really does vary. And the thing that I have found is there are many challenges and potholes in introducing and adapting innovation into your culture. Budget is one. Certainly, how much time do you have to deliver it and get it on the street into production? And there are others. Do you have the capabilities? Is your infrastructure suited for the innovation that is being proposed? What I have had the the luxury of is working with companies that factor those things into what they're delivering for me. They don't try to give me an innovative solution and tell me it's going to take this amount of time and it ends up taking much more. It's going to cost this much money and it ends up costing much more. So it really depends on the complexity of the problem we're trying to solve, and that will determine the time frame of introducing the innovation into the process. We
Thank you.
do, yes. Okay.
Thank you very much, Sam. So it sounds the typical management answer you started with saying it depends, but then you nicely elaborated that it's dependent on complexity, budget, time frame, capability of the agency, and the available infrastructure, if I synthesize it correctly. Omar, I'm going to come to you with the same question. First is, how do you identify the need for innovation and how does it get adopted across your agency?
Thanks, Dr. Joshi. As Dr. Joshi said, I work for Jenny May, and I have been in this space for the past year and a half. I've been working with the government for close to 8 years now. I come from the private sector. Now, in the private sector, innovation means survival and means profit. So for me, there is no question about that. Now, in the government space, it's a bit different because we don't go after making profit, but we make sure that we are a good steward of taxpayers' money and we provide good services for our citizens. So the focus is a bit different when I joined the government. So how does it start innovation? It's really start in the government from my observation, from the vision of the leadership. So the leadership needs to desire it, needs to mandate it, and needs to push for it, and needs to provide the funding. So for me, I've been very blessed and very fortunate to have leaders that believe in innovation and they're willing to lend their support. Now, how does it start? I agree with Ms. Capella. It's very complex. It's not easy because you need to touch on all the areas, and the areas are technology and policies and process and business functions. So you cannot just focus on technology and see you are doing innovation. You have to go across your agency and alleviate some of the pains that are being addressed. So we started by understanding where we are. by understanding our situation. So that's something that we needed to document where we are, and then start identifying opportunities for innovation. So we focus on a couple of innovation requirements, and then we start conducting a solution finding, and that's where we bring vendors and we talk to folks like Harmonia, for example, for other vendors that came in. My friend Manish Malhotra from Unisant also are lending a hand. So they provide insight, they provide us guidance, they provide us help. And then once we complete the solution assessment, we give recommendation to this to the agency leadership. So for us, we have a process, and also innovation is to establish a framework. You cannot just do it like that. It has to have a scope and a framework and certain guidelines to follow, and also certain KPIs. So we have done that for Jenny May, and we provided a deck that talks about our process, capture, our technique, and also the potential outcomes from what we do. So we have done that, and we came up with a very good proposal that the agency leadership is willing to fund and willing to lend a hand.
Thank you, Omar. Both of you are echoing the same approach. Basically, identify the problem, define the scope, and then look at the solution. And what I liked, Omar, is you added that it agency is not in insular sense of just agency. Outside stakeholders come and play a role. So
Absolutely.
that gives me an interesting introduction to Mark Abrams from Harmonia. As a GovCon contractor, you have had an opportunity to observe innovations in several of the agencies where you have used them, you have provided them solutions. Would you be able to outline how you perceive as a government contractor the innovation process in a federal agency?
Thanks, Professor Josie. So one of the key things is the partnership to be able to make that happen. And I'll use an example actually with Sam Jones at the Census Bureau for Sam's organization in the Economic Applications Division. So to go back a few years in 2014, they had used a traditional software process. And at the time, we're looking at trying to do their first adoptions of agile development. And the environment there was extremely conducive to trying to bring those innovations in. I think, as Sam had said, often they don't have the skill sets in the government agency, and we had success with a number of other projects and methodologies to bring in, that were CMMI certified. What worked well is we were able to work in a hybrid team at Census, where we had both the technical people from the government as well as ourselves, and Harmonia as a contractor, and we could work side by side, and that permitted that knowledge transfer to occur. And the people that were on the government side had a great attitude and willingness to try out the new ideas for agile development. I think there were two other things there that really helped in that situation. One was that the folks on the government side saw success because new features and software could be developed in weeks instead of months. But I think the other thing that was really excellent in that case is that the census team had metrics and logs from their previous software development methods, and we could all use that to establish that as a baseline and see what the measured difference was for Agile. And in that case, the defect rate was cut by a measurable 50% from a previous iterative method. So all those things were a good combination, for
Fantastic.
success.
Mark, sounds like what you're telling me is that innovation really is a shared process, if I captured that idea properly. It's not that you at Harmonia make something and then you go to Sam or Omar and say, look at this nice toy I have, would you buy it? It's not like that, right? It's a shared process.
Yeah, absolutely. That shared ingredients that needs to be there. So there has to be the openness in the organization, and I think that often comes from previous problems that they had. For example, we had an experience, use another analogy, at the State Department's International Narcotics and Law Enforcement. In their case, they knew they couldn't do software development the same way because of a previous project that had a bumpy road. And when we looked at their problem of supporting about 60,000 users in 5 different continents in the world, all who had divergent needs, we proposed a pretty radical idea, which is for the first time they consider using DevSecOps and regular releases every on a certain number of week cadence. so that all the users could see changes to the system and get invested in that, to be able to use Agile and also to put it in the Azure cloud. They'd never done any Agile, they'd never done any DevSecOps, they'd never done any cloud before. But the situation was right for that. And again, it was another one, to go back to Sam's comment, where they didn't have the skills, but they had the openness to be able to try that, and we could work in partnership with them.
In fact, Mark, thanks. In my own innovation research, the openness for new ideas is one of the key driver, and I'm glad I didn't want to plug my research, but you bring that issue. So I'm going to take this further from openness perspective and ask the question to Omar first, and Sam, I want you also to chime in after Omar's answer. Has COVID-19 triggered some specific need or openness for new kind of innovations? And do you have some example you can share with all the attendees of the conference today?
Uh, COVID really for us, we have been well prepared before COVID-19, which is amazing. I mean, we have done our collaboration tools assessment, trained folks on collaboration, which we really did this because of a mandate of our leadership, not knowing that COVID is coming. When COVID came, the Jenny May team were well prepared to conduct their business from outside, which was, no impact. And also our issuers, which are the banks and the mortgage company, they have also been prepared, and or they prepared themselves fast to get involved with us on a virtual. Now, virtual collaboration is mandating that we enhance it. We look at techniques, we look at solution that will help, assisting us in performing our task. So for me, everything right now happens virtually. Our applications are all, accessible. There is no need to be in the office for any reason. Uh, so for us, the collaboration tools, the techniques, the requirement for digitization. And one of the things we're doing right now is looking at e-signature, for example. So that's one of the concepts we're pushing ahead. We're looking for digital documentations to be shared, so there is no need for anybody physically to take a document. So for us, that is the main focus, to make sure that there is no need for any physical presence to receive any documentation. So and also for signatures. So e-signature for me, that's one of the initiatives we are helping with.
So,
We're
Omar,
also, yes.
we were chatting before, and one of the things you had mentioned is that COVID has made you appreciate use of blockchain even more. Is there where e-signature comes in picture?
Yeah, I think for us, it emphasized that we need to look at blockchain, we need to look at a digital, we need to look at other techniques to make sure that our business processes is well handled. So definitely, and blockchain is really becomes prominent during COVID-19. It becomes one of the tools that will ensure transparency and also to ensure security of our transactions. So definitely, this is one of the tools and techniques and solution that is number one in our list right now.
Thank you, Omar. Same question to you. What innovative processes have you introduced because of COVID, or like Omar, you are already ready?
So much like Omar and at HHS, we have begun preparing to work in a virtual and remote environment well before COVID. We didn't do it because we thought or knew that COVID was coming. We were doing it because we realized that all of the top private industries were able to complete their mission in virtual space. And there was no reason for us not to be able to do that very same thing.
Mhm.
One of the things that we did that really was a very innovative and forward thinking process, our business primarily in the economic directorate is getting responses from our respondents, from our data respondents. And we were doing this with paper. Paper, the quality was less, the cost was high. There were many challenges in trying to get your response rates where they needed to be to
And
produce quality products and data.
and probably time requirement was high too.
The time requirement was definitely high. So we began moving to electronic response. And by the time COVID came around, we were set up from an infrastructure perspective. Our applications and our systems were all set up to handle getting this data remotely. And I'd just be remiss if I didn't comment on something that Mark said. And one of the keystone things that I have found success with in working with government contractors is their willingness to knowledge share. Early on, that didn't exist. Early on, they would build it in a black box and ensure I didn't know what was going on, so that I had to continue the financial relationship with them. Now, Harmonious came onto the scene, and one of the first things they emphasized was working together with us in a team, and we were lockstep, and they were teaching us, not just sharing knowledge. There was a lot of teaching and mentoring and coaching going on. And I believe if you're going to have any kind of successful innovation, you have to have a partnership where that government contractor recognizes, I need to teach you how to fish. And that's where I'm at. Okay.
Thank you, Sam. Actually, two very interesting questions from attendees have popped up right following this conversation. So I'm going to ask you one question, and I'm going to ask one to Omar, and then Mark, I'll come to you to bridge both those questions. Sam, to you, the question is, given that even prior to COVID, you were moving away from physical to digital business. Can you identify any specific programs where small business and startups can start looking at bidding for your agency's work? Can you name some specific special programs that are focused towards that?
We have several surveys: Small Business Administration, minority-owned businesses. We have many surveys that answer that question. And it not just talks and speaks to how much of the business is actually occurring. We talk about where the business is occurring. One thing is, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, and I will get that back to you. But it is an interactive application where you can go in and identify where your business is. And this is what my business is. And it will tell you how many other people are actually doing the exact same business in that area. It will speak to what is the expected growth in that area for people who want to do or need your services. So, and also you can always go to census.gov, and we have a wealth of data there that I am certain you can probably answer any question that you have in respect to, how do I find out if this is the proper location for me to set up this particular service?
Okay, thank you, Sam. Omar, to you, the question is, if virtual and remote becomes more prominent in federal agencies' work, are there any specific requirements you are promoting, or have you assessed about encryption of data and communication protection?
Well, I mean, for us, even the implementation of the collaboration tool we use required encryption. So for us, that is something that in the government we don't question about. I mean, security comes as a number one requirement. So everything needs to be secure, everything needs to be FedRAMP. So, you know, for us, that is a mandatory. What we need to do is, if it becomes permanent, then there is a need not just to check what Jenny May is doing internally, but we need to look at the impact to our folks in the ecosystem, all the lenders, all the small banks, all the small mortgage companies, the partners like USDA, VA, FHA. We need to make sure that our collaboration platform can handle that, and also can handle folks that don't have the strength of their architecture, in terms of, you will, in terms of the having access to a good bandwidth, a good access to solutions. So for us in the government, we cannot just look at the folks that can afford a very good infrastructure, but we need to make sure that we assess the impact to the other organization that don't have access to that. So for us, these are of the work we are doing, making sure that we can accommodate our partners, whether they are small businesses, whether they are large businesses that work with us. So this assessment, that's what we're conducting for GNMA, in terms of seeing the impact. I mean, what do we need to do to enhance it? We are constantly challenged by finding ways to improve collaboration, finding ways to find technique to be 100% digital. So these are the challenges of our innovation lab and innovation team.
Thank you, Omar. Mark, what I want you to answer both those questions from the perspective of a private contractor is that even Elizabeth Capella mentioned that there is something called joint requirements assessment, right? And then in the answers, Omar stressed on ability to collaborate and with partners. From your perspective, since both these agencies happen to be ready for COVID and moving towards virtual even before COVID became a challenge, uh, what have you noticed in last 2 years, Mark, about new adoption of specific programs? And from your perspective, what have you noticed about encryption requirements in general in federal agencies?
Thanks. So a couple of things. I think from the comment about the joint requirements assessment, so I think part of the tension for technology is that agencies develop requirements from a top-down manner. But then the innovation often comes from a bottom-up manner. People that are actually working daily see what the problems are. And there are methods in the federal government to fund technology innovations. For example, we at Harmonia had used the Small Business Innovative Research Program frequently, but the problem is that those are often not aligned with the top-down requirements. So there's always this problem of trying to get the two to fit together. And of course now in the COVID era, it's harder because it's harder to have conversations and to do some of the in-person meetings that help you better understand what the needs are. One of the pieces of advice we got in the early days was that transition of technology is always a contact sport. So it's really critical to keep having those conversations. I think for a GovCon business, it's important to have the teaming of the technical team as well as the business transition team. We did that early. I'm the CTO for Harmonia, and Paul V. Sabu, who you might have seen from some of the other parts of the meeting, our CEO, we worked hand in hand to be able to, for her to look at how can we do the transition, how can we address contract challenges. Often people want to use the technology, but they aren't able to do that. Another ingredient of that, I think, dovetailing on a comment that Sam made, was that, all of the GovCon companies that are service companies have an advantage. We always looked at providing technology we developed for free so that it wouldn't be encumbered and we could share the knowledge in providing the services. The other element is to look for places, and this is where at Ginnie Mae with Omar, they've got an innovation lab. They've got a mechanism set up to try to look at the ideas from industry, and it's great to be able to make the connections to that. We have blockchain technology we're developing for the Defense Logistics Agency to be able to share documents in encrypted form. And we could easily socialize that with Ginnie Mae because of the innovation lab that Omar had. So a lot of it has to do with the continued discussions and ability to be able to collaborate to try to find those, and to take patience, because it takes time, eventually to get the funding lined up to be able to bring those innovations in.
So, Mark, another question popped up that seems right for you is if what would be your suggestion or advice for a small business which is not very heavily experienced in innovation capabilities? How can they win businesses at agencies like uh, Census or HUD?
I think a key thing is partnerships, within within the private industry community of companies, finding other companies that are doing business with the agency that you're able to collaborate with and partner, in terms of opportunities that are there. I mean, we at Harmonia have done joint ventures with several companies that have been very good, to foster that because, I think for us, virtually all the work we do is always as a team. We never try to do something by ourselves.
So,
And
Mark, sorry to interrupt you. I would love for the clarification when you said you've collaborated with many other firms. Are these small firms or large firms, or are you the fulcrum? If you can elaborate on that, please.
yeah, I think often we're the fulcrum for it, and we do. We will collaborate with large businesses, where it makes sense, and we've got some common skills or complementary. But we also do that with very small companies too, where we've got individuals that really have that passion or fire, to be able to bring something in. They've got a special understanding, and we can create the team that's needed to be able to make the right connections to the agency and make the plan feasible, so it can be some technology innovations that can be completed within the time and the budget, and there's no surprises, as hard as that is to try to manage with technology.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark, for that. Looks like attendees are getting warmed up to this conversation. Omar, there is one specific question directed to you. So I'm going to take the liberty to ask that question. How does Ginnie Mae protect its data from misuse or loss of PII, personal information?
We have a very active security team. I mean, this is and our data is all secured. Now we are going to the cloud, so increasing our security collaboration with with other government agency like the Homeland Security. They have a program, the MTIPS program. So for us, our data is well secured. We need by law to disclose data, and this data goes through a process of sanitation, of curation, and this data is out there on the internet, but you will not find any PII. I mean, we take this very seriously. Our PII data is not available on the internet. We make sure that our infrastructure is secured. We make sure that anything that we do is FedRAMP and it goes through our scrutiny. So definitely this is an area that is taken very seriously at Ginnie Mae.
Thank you, Omar. So I want to build on this. What can a small business do to get business from both your agencies? And Sam, you can jump in first, but Omar, I would like to hear from you too. Does having an intellectual property help? Should small businesses rush out and get uh, patents for their ideas, or does the knowledge share doesn't allow them for building IP? If you, Sam, if you can throw some clarity, and then Omar, I'll come to you.
I've had experience with both. Um, Intellectual property coming to the table with it already creates a lot of legal challenges, and it always doesn't lend itself necessarily to your specific problem you're trying to solve. I would piggyback on what Mark said. I think for a smaller company, uh, it would probably be better to partner with a company that already has a footprint and they can bring their unique skill sets and partner with that company to actually introduce themselves to the agency. Now, once they've introduced themselves to the agency and I've had a chance, or whoever else might be the lead on that, they will have an opportunity to see what capabilities that company can actually bring to the table. But that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Sam. That's right on target. I really appreciate that. So it's not a clear cut, if you have IP, you're a winner, but it is part of being the ecosystem. Omar, if you want to add to that.
I think Dr. Abrams and Sam have covered it. And the only thing I would like to add is that HUD and Jenny Mae are definitely aggressive in terms of getting small business participation, encouraging small business participation. Every year we conduct a day session introducing our requirement, our ask to small business specific. HUD is making it part of their procurement assessment. So there is a lot of encouragement for small business. But one way of doing it is to collaborate with other businesses that do that they're currently on our schedule, because you have to be a schedule approved to do business with HUD or Jenny May. So that's number one. Number two is to be active in terms of collaborating with our agency by maybe participating in some kind of fact finding or showcasing your value add to Jenny May, specifically if it's in the mortgage finance sector. So you can ask for an introduction, for example. I'm in the process of creating an ideation platform that will allow small business to participate in our campaigns by telling us the value add that they have. And if there is something that interests and is needed at Jenny May, they'll definitely hear from us. But I think the most probable one is what Dr. Abrams said, is collaborating and participating with folks that are doing business with us already.
Thank you, Omar. Again, the idea of ideation platform is wonderful. And that leads me into my next question to Mark. Mark, in your experience, what level of trial and error and experimentation agencies allow vendors to do? Uh, Even if the contract is not issued, even if there is no RFP, do agencies like to play with based on ideation platform, right? That something that may be useful in the future. What's your experience since you've worked with so many different agencies?
Well, I think one thing from a small business perspective is to try not to think in terms of just one agency being the target for a technology innovation area that you're working on, and to really look at that as a strategic path for yourselves, and where there may be multiple types of funding from different types of sources that help you get the core skills that you're then able to build up your value in sharing those with the agency. So if I go back to the blockchain example, so for ourselves, we use several different types of funding. We have a project with DARPA, which is a pure innovation agency. It's very competitive, but that's enabled us to be able to look at more advanced aspects. For example, how to do automated verification of blockchain contracts. So you're sure that the code people write is actually correct and secure before being used. Then we could use those innovations in our project with the Defense Logistics Agency I mentioned before to be able to develop a blockchain for that agency to take care of documents that come from non-DoD sources that they're trying to bring in securely that do have some PII associated. And then from that, then we're able to talk with other agencies. To go back to Mahesh, your question, we would then be able to look at how do we adapt that then, for example, for Ginnie Mae's use. Or we also work largely with USDA and also looked at how could we use that in USDA applications so that we can help put some of our own, resources and effort and knowledge in and go to them with something based on other work we're doing for other agencies. So you really got to look at it as a strategic plan for it.
And thank you, Mark. Again, it sounds like you read some of my research papers, because one of the things I always recommend is don't be a service provider, be a solution provider. And if you want to be solution provider, you have to find out what problem keeps your client awake in the night. And that's what you are saying in different words. So I love that idea. Another question has popped up, which I'm not an expert at all. So I will just repeat that. And I'll start with Omar, and then I'll go to Sam. How is your agency leveraging hyper automation of today? To be honest, hyper automation is a brand new word for me. So I'll shut up and ask you to answer.
You know, I'm like you, Dr. Joshi. I mean, hyper automation, we're looking at a couple of technique. I mean, there is the one that I'm exploring, what's called hyper intelligence, where, you know, you get proactive answers, you get proactive insight. So hyper automation is in the list for us. It's quite a challenging because there is no maturity of the technology that will assist with that. So definitely this is something that innovation lab is exploring. uh, it will be a very good to see more technology, more skill set in the in this program, if you will. So for us, definitely. I mean, it's not
Do,
surprising, but definitely it's in our radar.
Thank you, Omar. Do I interpret that as hyperautomation might be a next generation concepts based on machine learning and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I think for us, it all depends on how you label hyper intelligence. For me, it is the culmination of everything that we know in terms of AI, in terms of machine learning, in terms of the speed of processing, in terms of the data that allows for the insights and for that hyper movement. So definitely, this is a technology that definitely is on our list.
Thank you. Sam, you want to build on how census uses hyperautomation?
Well, Mahesh, I'm kind of in the same situation as you. It's a new word for me. However, you did mention machine learning. Are doing quite a bit of machine learning, but I'm just not an expert on it. So I'm not going to try to add any more to what Omar said. I'm have to punt that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's homework for both of us, but let's see if Dr. Abrams can highlight this issue.
Okay, well, I take the following perspective for hyperautomation. So I'm familiar with it really as, kind of the final frontier. How do you take knowledge workers and help automation for them so that they can be more effective at what they do, offload work to machines to do, robotic process automation is kind of an early stage, take out some of the manual steps. So maybe if it was Ginnie Mae with mortgage applications, some of the work between forms, and different tools could be done with robotic process automation. But to get beyond that, you really need to look at AI and machine learning. So we've worked with the Defense Department particularly in trying to, along the lines of hyper automation, to try to help decision makers that are faced with huge, complex number of variables and alternatives for decisions in a very fast moving environment that they operate in for their missions. And there's a significant work funded there. We've explored many different AI methods. They require knowledge elicitation, which has been hard because often different experts don't agree. We found more success with machine learning, let the machine observe how people work and then try to build models, whether it's from deep learning or neural nets or other methods that are used. But it is a very broad field, with a lot of techniques that are available for it. And I think it's a sort of field that will evolve by taking very niche areas. For example, we work in command and control in the military. There's a lot of focus there. And the same, I think, will happen in federal agencies too, for them to choose specific problem areas and get success with that and then grow from there.
Thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying that. Uh, I'm looking at the time. We are almost running out of time. But I do have one question. Sam, in our preparation conversation, you had mentioned something about if there is something new the contractor wants to bring, the contractor has to be careful about remaining within the scope of the problem and scope of the solution. Would you like to highlight that? Does that mean census primarily focuses on incremental innovations and there is no room for path-breaking innovations or disruptive innovations?
I wouldn't say that. I guess I would rephrase that just slightly, that there are already packaged solutions that actually do solve the problem. And in that situation, then it would be accepted with open hands. We would want that because we would assume that that's going to be less cost, less time to production and delivery. But many times the problem itself has to be understood and clearly defined. And if I have a solution presented to me before I know that person truly understands my problem, I'm not quite as open. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. So what you're saying is that if, and it goes back to what we were discussing, that if a GovCon firm works with you, understanding your problem, and then proposes a solution, there's room for both incremental and disruptive innovation.
Most definitely, yes.
But if they're just because they build it and they want to push it to you, then your red flag goes up.
It goes up because I'm concerned how much have they put into understanding my problem.
Well, I'm being given signal that we've passed 1 minute of our time. Thank you very much for very lively and interactive session. Mark, Sam, and Omar, I really appreciate your time. As we've been trying to say at TiE board, that if this was face-to-face, each one of you would have got a token of memento for participating. That we cannot do. So what we will be doing, as our chairman Manish Malhotra has suggested, we'll be donating money towards any charity. There are selected charities that, so that at least we appreciate your work. And I am aware of the ethics issue, so we will make sure your names don't show up. Thank you very much. Audiences at home, give a big hand. Fantastic job by these three panelists. I've learned a great deal, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'd like to thank our sponsors for the program. Thank you to Bank of America, our gold sponsor for the conference, who is also sponsoring our virtual networking event today at 3:15.
Am I playing these all consecutively?
The racial and economic disparities that have long existed in this country have only been widened by the coronavirus and amplified by the most recent acts of injustice. People around the world are coming together with greater urgency to demand action. At Bank of America, we know we all have a role to play to overcome the very real consequences of systemic racism and inequity. This includes individuals, governments, nonprofits, and the private sector. Racial equality and economic opportunity are deeply connected. That's why Bank of America has committed $1 billion over 4 years to address critical gaps in affordable housing, access to healthcare, employment and job skills, and the resources small businesses need to succeed. We can do more, and we need to do more now to further advance racial equality and economic opportunity for all.
And thank you to our virtual platform sponsor, TiE Law Group.
My name is Michael Ross. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the TiE Law Group, along with the senior partners, Raj TiE and Aparna TiE. I've had the honor to work with both of them. They bring 25 years of experience in both intellectual property and immigration law to the table. Mahesh Joshi is also here with me, and I would like him to say a few words.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Mahesh Joshi, and I introduce normally myself as an academic, entrepreneur, and advisor. And in my experience working with Indian entrepreneurs over past 20 years, what I have found is that the ones who have got success have moved from being service providers to solution providers.
Thank you very much. Solution providers in the US need to understand the value of intellectual property. And I would like Aparna and Raj to first introduce themselves and then discuss how this value is important to solution providers. Raj?
Thank you, Mike. I've been practicing intellectual property law for about 25 years, from 1996. I've worked at major law firms. I started my career at Fish & Richardson, which is the #1 IP boutique in the US. And I started TiE Law Group in 2018. We now have around 30 people, and we provide services in all areas of IP. And we also provide services in immigration, which is handled by Aparna.
Yeah, hi, I'm Aparna Dave. I have over 25 years of experience in employment-based immigration, and we at TiE Law Group provide excellent services in the area of employment-based immigration also.
Aparna, I have a question. What are the new changes coming up in immigration policies?
This is a too short a time to explain all the changes, Mahesh, but all I can say that employment-based immigration has changed drastically under this administration. So before you do anything in employment-based immigration, whether it be a company or an individual employee, please seek advice of an expert immigration lawyer.
Thank you. Raj, what important forms of IP protection are relevant to government contractors?
Trademark is very important because you want to protect your name of the business. Patents are important if you are a solution provider and you are coming up with solutions and new ideas. And trade secrets are also important, particularly to make sure that you don't lose your trade secrets to your employees or competitors.
In your experience, what are the concerns of Indian entrepreneurs in obtaining IP protection?
Well, simply stated, Indian entrepreneurs start small and they sometimes are not even aware that the kind of products and services they are offering, they can be protected.
Thank you very much, Mahesh. Raj and Aparna, what solutions does the TiE Law Group to help you solve these problems and get control of your immigration policies and your intellectual property?
We have come up with a system where we can provide services in a very cost-effective way. We have, for example, a 12-step process for drafting a patent application, where the first 6 steps are the same that an examiner does to examine a patent. And that takes about 40 hours. Then we start drafting the application with several interviews with the inventor. That takes 60 hours. And we do that for a cost of $8,500. So we are providing 100 hours of service for $8,500 professional fees.
Thank you very much, Raj. Mahesh, any final comments that you have?
Mike, Raj mentioning that 100 hours of work only for $8,500 is amazing, because recently in one of my companies that I'm advising, they hired a law firm to do IP protection at least for $20,000. Don't you think Raj's price is wonderfully manageable?
Absolutely. And for the quality of service that Raj and Aparna provide, that's a great value to any company dealing in solutions with the US government or any place else, frankly.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. Raj, Aparna, Mahesh, thank you so much.
And thank you to our bronze sponsor, Chug.
Hello everyone, I'm Navneet Chugh, managing partner at the Chugh firm. We're a law firm and as well as a CPA firm. We started the law firm in 1992 and the CPA firm in 1985. We have 4 pillars: corporate, tax, litigation, and immigration. And we do 15 other areas of law for businesses. And for individuals, we do criminal work, bankruptcy, and divorce. We have 300 employees with 114 lawyers and CPAs in 10 offices. And we believe in the 4 A's: being affordable, being able, being affable, and being available. Any legal, tax, or immigration issues ever, please call us or email us for a free consultation. Thank you.
And thank you to all of our sponsors for the conference.